Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Tales from the Fandom. I am so excited to have as my guest today, Courtney from the Twitterverse. Courtney has been a delight for me to follow because a lot of what she is into is what I'm into, and that makes following her on Twitter so much fun. And I was so happy when I reached out to you, Courtney, to have you come on. So welcome to the podcast, and thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Like I said, I'm thrilled. I've been following you for I don't know how long, at least a couple of months at this point, probably longer than that. And I have to say, like there is a lot of overlap between what you are into and what I like really enjoy, and it's always just such I think when we've talked, is like I made mention. I was like, oh yeah, some of your tweets are really good, and you're like, yeah, it's Twitter, like everything is gold. You got the good tweets coming out.
My quality tweets, I call them.
Yeah, I mean, it is just so much good stuff. Like I think you're the first person I saw about because we're recording this on November 14th, just as a note to listeners. And this thing with Taylor Swift came out, and you were the first person that I saw make mention of it. I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? Because, I like Taylor Swift and you like Taylor Swift, and there we go.
Yeah, I was very upset when I saw her post, so I had to post about it. So,
but you're in as a bit of information about the Courtney. You have a BA in public policy and admin, and what do you do with that? Just out of curiosity.
Everyone always asks that. That's a very common question. You can do a lot with it. You can do stuff in the public and private sector. So you can do policy work in like government and administrative work in business. I'm honestly so bad at explaining it, which sucks because I graduated and I should be good at explaining what I got my degree in. But I mean, you can just do all kinds of things in it. And I want to go more into the governmental policy writing, legislative type side.
Okay, that's cool. I have a problem explaining my job. I always tell people I just do data entry because it's the easiest thing for them to understand. I don't go into it like super in depth, because when I start getting into it, they're like, "What? What do you mean?" And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm cool with just saying I work from home. I do data entry. That's the extent of it.
Yeah, that's kind of. I need to find an easy answer for what my major is, because I always just fumble around with it, and I'm like, oh yeah, you can do whatever with it, and it's never a good answer.
You can do whatever you want. One of the things that we overlap with, and as everybody, if you're a longtime listener to the podcast, you know that I send out these really cool surveys, and I tell people, please complete them so that way I can get a general feel for what you'd like to talk about. And one of the things that we overlap with, and I feel is in this like really good space right now, because we've got a break. I feel like we've got a break from the movie side of it, and we got a break from it on like the TV side of it for right now, and that's Marvel, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and with Disney Plus happening, and all the new shows that are eventually going to start coming out in 2020 and beyond. But right now we're in that like period of, okay, Endgame's done, and we don't have anything until next year. Like we've got a break where we can just decompress from what we've gone through the past 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, it can be a break. I've missed everything, to be completely honest, though. I guess I just miss like having stuff to talk about within the fandom. I feel like the Marvel fandom's kind of dead right now, and it really sucks. I feel like Endgame took a lot out of everybody. and everybody really is within this like recovery period. Like I feel like decompressing is a good way to put it because at this point last year the fandom wasn't as dead as it is now because everyone was still so hyped for Endgame and talking about Endgame, but it's crickets. Like no one says anything.
Yeah, it's definitely more, and I know that I follow a lot of people. I follow a lot of people on Twitter. Too many people sometimes, but I feel like right now they're in the hey, we're getting showrunner information on like the She-Hulk series and Moon Knight and who's going to play Kamala Khan, and I think we're in that stage of everything seems to be getting lined back up for like they just announced like the Ant-Man 3, and we're getting like the new pieces in the puzzle for what could be for the next like 5 to 10 years, but we're just like waiting to see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's easy to get excited, but at the same time, like, I'm the type of person that I'm like, "Man, give me a trailer." Like, I wanna see footage. I wanna know what's going on, like, leak some set pictures from Falcon and the Winter Soldier because they just started filming either this week or last week. So I'm like, "Let's leak some set pictures from that because I, like, wanna see stuff. Because that's what gets me, like, excited is being able to see stuff. But it's been really exciting to see the series and things coming out. I'm out of the ones you just named, I'm, like, the most excited about She-Hulk because I have wanted She-Hulk in the MCU for, like, ages and ages. I can't
Oh
believe we're
my,
actually getting it.
I know, like whenever people would talk about the Netflix shows, like Daredevil and Iron Fist and Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, that one of the conversations was during the time when Netflix was actually doing them was okay, what shows would you add? And I was always like, I think if you're going to stick to like the New York type superheroes, She-Hulk and Moon Knight are the perfect fits for both of them. And I kept waiting and I kept waiting, and then of course like Netflix is like, no, we're not doing it anymore. And it wasn't Netflix, it was Marvel, because Marvel had their Disney Plus plans that we didn't know about at the time. And yeah, I am so looking forward to She-Hulk. I know it's a dream, but I really hope like Brooklyn Nine Nines. I think her name's Beatrice Sharma. No, that's not it. Oh gosh, I can't remember her
I
name.
know who you're talking about, and I can't remember her name right
Oh
now
gosh.
either.
See, now I'm going to look it up. So I'm going to look it up. But I really want. I'd really love to see her play the thing. Her name is Stephanie Beatrice.
Yes. Yes. Oh,
I think
she
she'd
would
be
be a good
perfect.
she would be really, really good. My thing for She-Hulk, I've just wanted her to get introduced somehow for ages, but after I saw Spider-Man: Far From Home, I was like, "Peter Parker needs a lawyer."
Hmm.
And you know who would be a good lawyer for Peter Parker? But I was like, "Oh, that's never gonna happen. They're never gonna do that." And then when they announced the She-Hulk series, I was like, "Oh, okay, well, maybe." Except now, I don't know when the She-Hulk series is coming out, so I don't know how it lines up in the timeline, and I don't know if they would put her in a movie before they introduce her in her series.
Well, I thought, and again, I read too much stuff on the internet sometimes. I thought that I just read that every series that they're doing, so like She-Hulk, Moon Knight, Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, that every series is going to be used as a launching point for them to have their own movie afterwards. Now, I could be wrong, and things could change because we were supposed to have the oh gosh, the show that bombed. It became a TV series instead of being a movie. Oh gosh, the people that live on the moon with the Terrigen mists, Black Bolt.
I
Oh gosh,
know.
all of
I
my friends are going to kill me, like that. I don't know these things. Black Bolt, Inhumans, like
Oh,
the
yeah.
Inhumans was supposed to be a movie, and then they changed it to a TV series,
Yeah.
and then that bombed. But so things could change. But that's the rumor on the street was
Yeah,
that.
and I've seen that too, and especially with Kamala Khan, like, of course, you're gonna wanna put her, like, in a Captain Marvel movie at some point, but I think they wanna introduce them before they start putting them
Hmm.
in Marvel movies, and so I don't know, are they gonna be on Disney Plus before, the next Spider-Man movie comes out? Is the She-Hulk series gonna have been launched? So, I don't know. it depends on the timeline. What's Kevin Feige gonna do?
Exactly. Now that there's that big skip of time between, the end of Endgame and how Spider-Man Far From Home picked up, at that correct timeline of like the 5 years in the future type thing. It's like there's a lot of wiggle room with where they're going to set things and put some of these shows or people and characters. So I'm looking forward to just seeing. Man, I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do. It's just there's a lot now.
Yeah, I was watching when Disney Plus launched, the first thing I watched was the Marvel, expanding the universe thing, and it wasn't even that long, it was just, like, 12 minutes, and it was, just explaining, like, the shows they have coming out, and it just got me so, so excited. I was like, "I can't wait for these to come out. I need them now. I don't wanna have to wait."
I think the fandom is going to get hyped probably. And I feel like December and January are going to be those months where we're going to get the announcement of like what movies we're getting next year. Beyond, I think like Black Widow's the first one up, if I'm not mistaken, because they're filming that right now, or they've wrapped or something along those lines. But I'm excited to see what movies come in like that summer and fall winter like slots that they have.
Yeah. I think they've already announced the timeline. They did it, was it at Comic-Con? They already announced it for next year? I'm looking through my photos right now because I saved the picture of the timeline because I was like, "I know I'm gonna need to have this on hand
Let's
to
see here.
fangirl
Yeah,
over."
yeah. See, and you're right. Here you. It looks like there's only two right now, unless I'm looking at an older one. But it looks like Black Widow is May and Eternals is November.
Wait, Eternals is the one next year?
Yeah,
Oh,
with the big cast.
I didn't realize that was next year.
That's what it
Oh,
says.
I'm so excited for the Eternals.
Yeah, their cast looks really good.
I know. When they announced the full cast, I was, like, losing my mind. Just imagine me while Comic-Con is happening, like, in my room, following the live coverage on Twitter, just screaming every few minutes. I could
Mhm.
not contain myself, and just all their announcements. Kevin just always has so much up his sleeve, and they just the way that they plan out the universe and the way that they shape it just blows my mind because they just have so much and they just plan out for years and years in advance. Like going back to Endgame, like how I just how they planned all that and how they connected all the stories through Infinity War and Endgame and how they wrapped them all up. Like that's just amazing and magnificent.
It
And
is. It's like that GIF that you always see like with the person with the strings tied to like all the different pieces of paper and you're connecting them. You're like
yeah.
the amount of stuff that they have to keep track of is just mind-boggling. Like you got to just make sure that you're hitting those, even like the little things where they mention it like in one movie and then like 5 movies later they mention it again. You're like, what?
Yes, and they keep track of it, and they keep track of it so well, and there's stuff that when I go back and watch Marvel movies now, like, I'll catch stuff still that I haven't noticed before, in movies that I've seen, like, several times, and it's just amazing to me that just, the throwbacks that they'll do to other movies and the way that they'll bring in things from other movies, and wow. Just I don't have a mind that thinks that way, and so the way that they're able to pull it all together and pull it all off with their writing and bringing everyone together is amazing.
Now, have you been into the MCU since the beginning with Iron Man, or did you get into it later? Like, where was your entry point?
So I would say I was like a casual watcher of all the movies, like in the beginning. Like I don't remember seeing Iron Man in the theater, but I definitely saw the first Avengers movie in the theater. And we would watch the Captain America movies and things like that. But I would say when I got older, more in middle school and high school, is when I really was like, man, these Marvel movies, there's something. Um, but I think when I really would have considered myself part of the fandom, when I was like, okay, I'm going to put like my heart and soul into these, was probably I'm trying to, like, pinpoint a specific movie. So I'm trying to think of the timeline of them, like, coming out. Um, I don't know, around 2017, 2018, whatever movies those were. It was definitely around, like, Spider-Man: Homecoming, Black Panther, around when those movies were coming out. I don't know how close those movies were to each other coming out. When I do rewatches now, I do them in, chronological order, not in release order.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm skewed on when the movies came out. So I don't know. But that was really just those movies in particular, like Spider-Man: Homecoming and Black Panther was when I was really like, these movies, you guys, are amazing. And I love them and I'm gonna pay attention to them and the cast and get involved and be part of the fandom. And Infinity War, I think, though, was really when I got super involved on Twitter, I would say.
What was it about, like, Spider-Man and Black Panther and getting involved? Like, what was the draw? Because, as somebody who enjoys the movies and watches them, like, I'm into them and I talk to people about them, but what was it about you that you're like, I need to just get involved in it?
Well, I know for the Spider-Man movie, you know this from following me on Twitter, I'm, like, madly in love with Tom Holland. And I feel like it's, people stereotype and they're like, "Oh, you only watch the Spider-Man movies for Tom Holland." But for me with the Spider-Man movies, though, it's because I feel like he's the person that's portrayed, like, Peter Parker the best.
Hmm.
And so when I went and saw, like, his portrayal of Peter Parker, I was like, like, wow, like, that's Peter Parker, like, that's the best one I've seen, and Spider-Man and Captain America are my 2 favorite superheroes, and, actually, Captain America used to be my favorite, but then when I went and saw Spider-Man: Homecoming, I was like, "Sorry, Cap, but Spider-Man's got you, like, he's past you now." And just because of the way that, Peter Parker, that story and the way that he was played in that movie, and so that was really what captured my attention with Spider-Man: Homecoming, and then with Black Panther, I think it was the representation of that movie and what that
Hmm.
meant to people, because that movie was such a big deal and such a cultural phenomenon, and seeing how much that meant to people just was amazing to me, and I was like, "This movie's so important," and Marvel, having the first, like, superhero was so important, and I was like, "I love that," and I love that they're gonna have Captain Marvel come and have a female superhero, and yeah, so that was really a big part of it too.
Okay, yeah, and you said, I just want to make sure. I need to confirm your favorite character is Spider-Man,
Ye
correct? I want to
Yes.
make sure I didn't mishear that.
Yes, and anyone that sees my Twitter will know that. My Twitter name, and you will know this from following me, has not changed. Well, you haven't been following me since Infinity War. My Twitter name has stayed the same since Infinity War, and it's been "We're using our made up names," which is a quote from Infinity War that Peter Parker says. And I changed it to that after Infinity War came out, and anytime I go to change it back to my actual name, I can't bring myself to do it. And I've changed it to a few other random things, like, just for, a few weeks here and there, but I always go back to we're using our made up names. We're using our turkey names now for Thanksgiving though, so.
Yeah. I saw that because, that's one of the things that gets me, and I swear, like, that's the one thing on Twitter that I have a hard time managing is when people change their names. I have no clue who I'm talking to until I go to their Twitter page and I'm like, "Oh, that's who this person is now. I understand."
Yeah, see, it's my brand now. I have to stay using my made up name, or
Mhm.
people won't know who I am. It's been like 2 years or something.
It that is something, like, because I remember when, like, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies were coming out and everyone was like, "Oh, that is so good," "It's so good," and Spider-Man 2, still good, Spider-Man 3, not that good, and then we got the other ones with, Garfield, Andrew Garfield, and I think I saw the first one, but not the second.
Listen, Andrew Garfield is an amazing actor, and he got gypped on his scripts, and I will die on that hill. I think that he would have been an amazing Peter Parker, but they gave him just really crappy movies, and I just feel really bad for him for that.
Yeah, I like I don't know much to say beyond like I definitely have to agree Tom Holland is like a very good like he's been the best that I've seen. And I think that without him being in that role, that we would have lost the Spider-Man in the MCU kind of thing. Because I know that there's a lot of reports that came out that said that it was like him making phone calls and saying like you need to keep Spider-Man in the MCU and bringing that gap of Sony and Marvel back together.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I was so upset when the news broke that Spider-Man wasn't in the MCU anymore. I had, like, friends, like, texting me to, like, check on me and ask if I was okay. I was not. I was, like, distraught, but I really, like that was I have a major beef with Sony and how they handle the Spider-Man movies,
Hmm.
and so, like, Sony having sole control over the Spider-Man movies is like my worst nightmare, and then it happened. I can't even imagine being Tom Holland and being anyone involved in that movies really and having that happen, because also you have to think about it too, that ruins the whole story and just where they were gonna go with it. I was like, I can't even believe that this is happening. But yeah, I read a lot of stuff too saying that it was him, and it probably was because when you got the guy that plays Spider-Man being like, "Yo, put me back. I don't wanna go anywhere."
Put me back in the movie.
But I'm so glad that they were able to get it to work out because honestly, I had kind of like lost hope. I was like, well, I'm just gonna have to resign myself to a crappy Spider-Man movie. I'm gonna go see it, but it's gonna suck.
Yeah, it's that whole like even when it's 20th Century Fox with the X-Men. And it's like, oh gosh, like they're only making a movie every X amount of years because they have to or they lose the rights to it. And that's how I felt with like the Spider-Man franchises after the Andrew Garfield ones. They're like, eh, we'll eventually make a movie and like they partnered with Marvel to put out the new one, and it's like, okay, like that worked. That was
Yeah.
good, and it's good, and you can see that we're having like a good reception about our movie instead of like not that great reception. And yeah, I hate when it gets to that point where they're like, okay, we need to make a movie. Well, let's just put something on the screen and keep our rights to it.
Yeah. And, different people blame Sony, different people blame Disney, but like I said, I have major beef with Sony over these movies already. And so I was just like, Sony, get your act together and give Disney the money they want because Marvel is the reason that these movies do so well. It's the fact that he's in the MCU and that they have the MCU vision behind it, I think. Because
Mhm.
otherwise, like you said, it would just kind of be another Spider-Man movie that they're putting out every few years to keep the rights to it.
Absolutely, and when I think that there was one fan fiction. It wasn't fan fiction. It's just somebody tweeting about it. Like, well, here's how they could do it if like Sony decided to break away and like have Doctor Strange like put him in a universe where nobody knows who he is or whatever. But I was like, nah, it can't. I can't happen. Like I was like, it can't be like this. Don't let it end like this. And
Well, especially since they've like set him up to lead now. Like, he's kind of the one that's supposed to, like, take over from Tony, although I say that and, like, now I'm thinking about how they ended his movie. I don't know. So, who knows? We'll have to see because we never know what Marvel's gonna do, but, yeah, it's just there's no way because what are you gonna do? Have everyone in Marvel, like, break the fourth wall and look at the camera anytime I say Tom, Peter Parker needs to be mentioned, because they couldn't have even been able to, like, mention his name, so
would you say that the Spider-Man movies are your favorite in the Marvel cinematic, or do you tend to like be drawn towards another movie?
There are other movies that I like a lot. I think The Winter Soldier is, I think, one of the best ones. Um, Thor Ragnarok is one of the ones that I definitely go back and watch the most, and it's probably also one of my favorites. And Infinity War is one of my favorites too. Um, so there Marvel just makes good movies, you
Mhm.
know? I'm, like, peeping over at my DVDs now to make sure I don't, like, leave out any other ones. The Guardians of the Galaxy movies are hilarious, and like I said, Captain America is my favorite other than Spider-Man, and so I tend to rewatch his movies a lot. I rewatched the first Avenger and the Winter Soldier more than Civil War, though, because I firmly believe that, Steve Rogers got gypped of his 3rd movie, and Civil War is actually an Avengers movie,
Mhm.
because there's just so many people in it, and it focuses so much on Tony too, and
Right.
so Captain America deserves his 3rd movie, but we will never get it, so, oh well.
Yeah, Winter Soldier, that's the one where I feel like I've watched that one the most because not only is it a great story, but I feel like between Steve Rogers and then you have the introduction of Sam and you have Nat and you have this like trio of like this character like the trio of them together just works so well. And like after that movie came out, I was telling people I'd really love to have a movie where it's like Falcon and Black Widow doing stuff together because they had like some really great like character moments and chemistry.
Yes, I agree with that, and I love Natasha so much. She's one of my favorites, and that honestly partially might be because she's just been, like, the only girl that's been around kinda since the
Mhm.
beginning, but, I'm so excited for her solo movie, but just yeah, her being in The Winter Soldier, I think, really does add to my love of it, and I love Sam too, and so him being in there and then The Winter Soldier, Bucky coming back in that movie, like, just everything about that movie is just amazing. I really do think that The Winter Soldier is one of the best
Mhm.
Marvel movies that they've made.
Absolutely. And I do have to say, like, because you mentioned Thor Ragnarok, and it's one of those movies that it lines up along with like Guardians of the Galaxy as being one of the more fun movies
Mhm.
and entertaining. And there were people on my Facebook, like friends that I was friends with for for a couple of years, and they're like, "I hate Thor Ragnarok." I'm like, "How? I
Honestly, they
don't
have no
I don't
taste. You
understand."
need to tell them that they have no taste because Thor Ragnarok is just one of the
Oh my
best
goodness.
movies. I and Loki, oh my gosh, Thor Ragnarok is like my favorite version of Loki. And I'm so excited for Loki's series, but I'm very upset that it's gonna be like 2012 Loki.
Yeah, the I think the one thing about Thor Ragnarok that I was disappointed in was that they did all their trailers and advertisements like showing that Hulk was in it. And I really wish like that had been like not shown. So it could have been one of those surprise moments of, oh my gosh, like here's this champion. And it's Hulk.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that because that would have been, like, such a good reveal. Honestly, the dynamic of Valkyrie and Hulk/Bruce, Loki, and Thor is oh my gosh, I love it so much. It works so well.
It does, and not only that, but you get like the added bonus of some of like the smaller characters, like you get Korg, and you're like, oh yeah, Korg is cool too, and you get like you just seem to get like a more fleshed out background of like there's so many characters getting like those little moments, and it's just it's nice to have.
Yeah, I'm so excited for the next Thor movie too.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to so much.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good one.
So for Marvel, and just out of curiosity, like they've announced like the 5 bajillion movies for over the next 5 or 6 years, plus the Disney Plus stuff. What are you most looking forward to?
Ooh. Oh man, that's a hard question because I just had like 3 different answers pop into my head at the same time. Um, Honestly, I would have to say the Loki series right now is the one I have to say because he's one of my favorite characters and he has been. And I'm excited because his is it's a time traveling series, and the premise is that he's going through and, like, messing up history, and that just sounds hilarious. Shenanigans are gonna ensue. Um, and I think that it's gonna set up something bigger because Marvel isn't gonna do something that wouldn't do that, you know?
Hmm.
So, I'm very excited for that one.
Absolutely. And I know that, you mentioned like messing up history, and it's funny that you say that because they were talking about, I read an article about the Eternals movie, and one of the things was that there's apparently like one of the big things in that movie is that they're going to be showing like where they've been all this time, like going from like prehistoric time through like up through the ages. And one of the characters, Black Knight, is like this character from like Arthurian legend or something along those lines. And it's like it deals a lot with like time travel, not time travel, but like just where they have been and what they have done to like move history in different directions.
Huh. That's interesting. I have, like, theories going now, like Loki popping up and accidentally, like, seeing the Eternals somewhere
Mhm.
and being like, "Oh, no. Let me get out of here," because that's what Loki would do.
Oh my goodness. Now, we talked about Marvel, and I'm pretty sure like if I had anyone that was like super into Marvel, we would just go on and on for like hours. And as much as I love doing that, there's other fandoms that are out there.
Yes.
And there's one that I talked to you about before we started recording, and it's on Netflix. And it's one where I've had it in my watch list, my queue, whatever it is called now, for at least a year, probably longer than that. And I'm always like, when you get the hankering for a new show and you're like, okay, what am I going to sit down and watch? Like that's a show that I look at it and I'm like, okay, I could get into that, and then I pick something else. And it's happened more often than not. Like I've been shows that I've seen multiple times instead of watching new shows, and I'd really love to learn more about it because it seems it's intriguing to me, and I'm curious about it. And I think this might be the first time we're talking about it on the podcast. So it's the Magicians TV series.
Yes, okay. I told you before the show that I have a lot to say about this show. So it is or was I have a hard time talking about this show because it truly was one of the best shows that I've ever seen, and it's not over yet, and I'm talking about it in past tense because the most recent season finale, was very hard to watch, and I feel like the Magicians fandom is in solid agreement on this. And I'm gonna get say this spoiler free, and that's another reason it's kinda hard to talk about it is because it's kinda hard to talk about, um, what happened and be spoiler free, but it's just, I would call it a case of bad writing and throwing away character arcs. But with that being said, it really is one of the best series that I've ever watched. I watched it because my sister recommended it to me, and my sister had been going on and on about it and how good it was. And I was finally like, you know what? I need something to watch. Sure. And then I watched the first 3 seasons, like full seasons, 40-minute episodes or whatever, in 6 days because I was just hooked and I just could not stop. And it just got better and better and better with each season. Eh,
Now, what is The Magicians about? Because the problem I have, and I apologize to you because I'm going to link it to another show. Um, the Magicians, and I get it confused sometimes with like the Librarian series, which is another show that I've not seen. And I feel like for some reason it just seems like I've connected them in my brain, so I don't know anything about The Magicians at all.
So I don't even know what the librarians is. So it's
Oh,
probably
okay,
good for me
that
explaining it.
works.
So the magicians, the premise is that you have this guy named Quentin, and he is just this ordinary guy living in I wanna say New York City, but I'm actually probably wrong because 'cause it's been a year since I watched the pilot. Um, but he gets brought in somewhere to take a test, and at the end of the test, he ends up finding out that magic is real, and then he gets invited to, go to school somewhere where to train for magic and to learn how to use magic, and it's called Break Bills University. And so that's kind of the premise of the show. And of course, a lot more ends up happening. There's a lot more going on, and that's kind of where the storyline takes off. Is I can't even remember what happened in season one because we are so far away from what happened in season one now in the show, and I don't want to like give away any spoilers because they have plot twists like all the time. But there's a lot of different characters get introduced, and I love the show because they are able to handle, I think, relevant issues pretty well. They have a lot of representation in the show. It's just a really good show all around. Until you hit about halfway through season 4, and then they crush your dreams. But I don't, I don't want that to stop people from watching it though, because me and my sister were talking about it, and we get mad about it like once a month. We'll randomly text each other and be like, "Just remember the Magicians finale for season 4." But I think being able to like think critically about fandoms that you're in and be able to critique them is like important instead of just blindly loving everything they do. You know, like you got to be able to recognize sometimes that there's bad writing or that something bad has happened and that it doesn't make sense with the storylines that have been already presented to you, I guess. But season 5 is going to be starting, I think, up in January, and maybe they will redeem themselves from what happened. And we shall. I was just going to say we shall see.
What's the draw for you and the show? Because, like I said, it's on my list, and I just haven't clicked it yet. So like, what drew you to the show? What keeps you in the show and watching it?
All of the characters, honestly, what drew me to the show was a major spoiler that my sister told me, and I didn't even get to that for season 3, but it was something she had told me about one of the characters, and I was like, "Oh, are you serious?" And she was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Oh, I have to watch it," and it was about one of the characters, Elliot, and something that happens in his storyline, and Elliot is, like, my favorite character, and he has one of my favorite character arcs in the entire show. And he's part of the reason I'm going to keep watching the show is because I want to see what happens to his character. But the show does a really good job of drawing you in and making you care about all these different people. And it does a good job of balancing all the different people and all the different characters and just making you want to know what's going to happen to them and making you care deeply about just their lives and what's happened in their lives. And I think that sometimes shows with multiple characters in their casts don't always balance the characters well and don't always develop all the characters well. And so I really applaud the magicians for being able to do that.
That is definitely one of the things where I feel if you go past a certain number of characters, that a lot of shows they start dropping the ball on character story arcs and remembering what the characters were doing, and then a couple episodes later you're like, why are they doing that? That seems out of the ordinary for them. Because I feel like people get lost with having to balance or juggle like character arcs and character storylines and keeping the characters like to who they actually are versus like, well, we needed them to do this, so we did it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And another thing that the Magicians is really good at is they have a really quirky and funny sense of humor in the show that really fits mine. And so I think the show is just hilarious, but they also balance that really well with the serious moments that they have and with serious storylines that they have. And I think sometimes that when shows try to do that too, they do not do a good job of it. I've watched shows that have tried to be funny and be serious and handle serious topics at the same time, and they don't do a good job of it. And The Magicians does a really good job of balancing that, I think. So
I was curious about with the magicians. Is it more like is it more on the serious side of stuff, or is it more like comedy with serious stuff like weaved into it?
Who honestly, I would say I think it depends on when in the show you are and what episode you're watching. But I do think it's pretty balanced throughout too. Um, like I think even when there's really serious stuff going on, just by nature of the characters and when you get used to them, you'll still kind of laugh. But when it needs to be serious, like it's serious, if that answers your question.
It answers it enough. Because, that's a tough question. I can't like because it'd be hard to differentiate because I know there are some shows where you're like, especially on Netflix, and I always get confused. Like, you'll get the shows that are like, oh, this is a comedy, and you watch it and you're like, no, it's not. This isn't a comedy. Why are you telling me that the show is a comedy? So it's always nice to kind of like get that sense of, okay, I know what I'm getting into
Yeah.
versus like, "Oh, you recommended the show for me, and it's not anything of what I would like," or yeah, like, "Thanks a lot, Netflix."
Yeah.
Okay, so you recommend it, and I have to make sure with The Magicians, it's like a full, like, traditional 20 to 24 episode season, or is it like the 13 episode season?
I'm gonna check that because I don't actually remember because it's been so long since I binged it. It's 13,
Oh, okay.
it looks like, yeah. So it's 13, but it's like 40-minute episodes.
See, I like that, like, I'm glad that we're getting into that routine, that model of 10 to 13 episodes, and we don't need the bloat of 20, 22, 24 like traditional TV used to have to do because they needed to have like whatever it was, like they needed so many episodes for syndication or advertising or whatnot. Like 10 to 13 episodes, say what you want to say and get your stories in.
Yeah, I agree with that, but then when you start watching The Magicians and you hit about episode 10 and you realize that you have, like, 5 different storylines that need to be resolved and things are out of control and you only have 3 episodes left to resolve them, you will not feel that way.
Yeah, let's see. I survived that with Game of Thrones, so um yet another TV series where like that last season is like, oh gosh, like there's some really cool stuff in it, and then there's some really not stuff in it. So yeah, I gotcha. But yeah, that's definitely a show that's been on my radar for a long time, and I've wanted to watch it. I just never have. Like, and now Disney Plus is here to like ruin my life.
Disney Plus is a blessing, but I also feel that because it's already consumed so much of my time and it's only been out for, like, 3 days.
Oh gosh, like I got my username and password Tuesday night, and so Wednesday was let me watch parts of Endgame that I really enjoy, and then I skipped over to let me watch some of the Force Awakens because I haven't seen that in forever, and then let me watch The Mandalorian because I know I'm going to get spoiled. And sure enough, I woke up this morning with someone posting all the spoilers like blatantly on their Facebook page, and I was like, really?
Oh, that
Really? The thing's been
sucks.
out for 2 days, 2 days, and you couldn't, like, hold it in or maybe put your link in the comments so that way it wouldn't pop up? Like, come on.
I inadvertently got spoiled because I saw a trending topic on Twitter,
Oh
and
gosh.
I didn't think anything of it until, like, a minute before I, like, saw the reveal, you know? And then I
Mhm.
put it together, and I was like, "Oh, man, that would've been so much cooler to see if I hadn't realized what was happening."
Yeah, man, I don't know, like, I did well the first 2 days and like, I wasn't even, like, ready to watch it yet, but I knew I needed to, and I guess this is okay, like, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Thanks a lot, people. I know that there's people out there that like are totally cool with spoilers, but I like getting like that surprise.
Yeah, I see, that's why I'm so adamant about seeing things, like, on opening night is because I just don't even wanna risk it. I'm not about that life. I do not wanna
Mhm.
see any spoilers. I already saw, like, a small one for Frozen 2, and I was so pissed off about it.
Oh gosh. I that's like, that's I will say, and I fully admit it, like I got kids, and I'm happy with taking them to go see Disney movies, and I'm less happy taking them to go see like the garbage movies that I call like Boss Baby and Troll, like some of the stuff that's outside of like the good wheelhouse. But like I liked Frozen, like I jam out to like the Frozen soundtrack sometimes, and I like the characters, and I'm really interested to see like what happens with Frozen 2 because what they've got in the trailer so far has piqued my interest enough to where it's a possibility of us going to see it in the movie theater, which is a big thing.
Yeah, I have no shame in admitting that Frozen is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I watch it quite frequently, and I am so pumped about Frozen 2. I've already bought my tickets for opening night, and I will be there with all of the families and their kids to see
That's
it.
awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I know that and I've had many a guest talk about Frozen before, and I will say that I prefer like if I had to choose a movie in like that recent era of movies, like Tangled would be mine.
Oh, I love
But
Tangled.
I love Anna. Like if she is my jam. Like her and Rapunzel. Like I wish I could just get a movie of them together.
Oh, that would be so awesome. See, I love Anna and Elsa, and I love Kristoff, but that's probably because Jonathan Groff voices him, and I love Jonathan Groff so much. But honestly, all of them, just they're so great.
They are, and it's good. And I'm interested to hear the new song that they've got because someone said that because I think the soundtrack is out now. So someone said it's good, but it's not like let it go to like where it's going to be like that song where you hear it for like eternity.
Yeah, I've heard the soundtrack is really good. I'm excited because Kristoff has a song, and I've
Hmm.
heard that it's like has 80s vibes, and I love 80s music. So, I am going to be listening to it on repeat, but I don't listen to soundtracks until I see the movie, so
Oh, that's a good thing. I remember, I wasn't like much of a soundtrack. Like I love soundtracks, but I wasn't much of like a movie soundtrack person. I used to work at Blockbuster, and right before the Phantom Menace came out, we had the soundtrack in stock, and of course, like there were spoilers on the back of the soundtrack, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's not something I wanted to know, but thanks a lot, soundtrack.
yeah, see, I found that, like, you either get spoilers or, like, with me, either I'll get spoilers from it or I will end up, like, just painting this picture of what I think's gonna happen in the movie in my head, and that'll, like,
Hmm.
skew what I think is gonna happen while I'm in there, and I just don't want that. I wanna go in blind or go in with whatever I have from the trailer in there, you know?
I feel you. I totally understand. Now, before we wrap things up, we've got a little bit of time, and you and I talked about what we were going to talk about now. So it's a show on Netflix that I've been really wanting to watch, and I have to preface this by saying I don't do like horror movies. I'm not like a horror movie person, but one of my friends said that it's really good, and I needed to watch it, but I need to watch it where I can pay attention to it. And you said in your email to me that it is probably the most well done show you have ever watched, and that is The Haunting of Hill House.
Yes. So and I don't say that lightly, and it really is probably the best show I've ever seen. Just so well directed, so well acted, such good storylines, so much thought put into it. Like, honestly, I cannot praise the show enough.
Again, not a horror person. I heard it's scary. How scary is it for a wimpy person like me?
Well, okay, so I enjoy being scared, so I'm not good at answering this. It does get pretty scary, at some parts. I don't wanna lie to you and be like, "Oh, it's not that scary," and then you go and watch it and be like, How dare you make me watch this, and now I can't sleep." Um, there's a lot of not a lot of jump scares, there's a few jump scares, but it's more like psychological horror, I like
Mhm.
to call it. Like, there's ghosts and stuff in it. I don't think that's a spoiler, I'm pretty sure that's in the trailer. But it's psychological horror because it kinda messes with your head because that's kinda what's going on in the series, is there's stuff messing with the people's in the series head. And it's done in a way that's realistic too, and so I think that's kinda what messes with you.
Yeah, I see, like, I was told, "You need to watch it, but you need to watch it, like and you have to pay attention because, like, there's things that are happening in the background, and like, if you don't watch it completely, like, you'll miss it." And I'm like, "Okay," like and that's the one thing that's been keeping me from watching the show is generally I work and watch TV at the same time, and it's like, "Oh gosh, like, this is one where I need to pay attention to it," but I don't really have that pay attention time, so to speak, but I wanna catch everything because that like, I think that's really, like, the hallmark of a great show is seeing all the little things that are happening in the background of shows like that.
Yeah, so I actually have a coworker that tried to watch it, while she was working at the same time, and because she thought she could do it, she had kinda been told the same thing. She thought she could, though, just kinda watch it while she was doing other things, and she ended up, within the first episode, just getting so riveted with it that she knew that she had to watch it when she got home. I think that the show does a good job of drawing you in, like, even if you hadn't been told that, you would know, within the first episode of the show that you had to watch it and give it your full attention just because it pulls you in so well.
Is it a show that you can binge, or do you need to like take a break from it? Because I know that sometimes shows like that can get like really intense.
I think it depends on the episode and it depends on you as a person. So when I first watched it, I binged the first 5 episodes, and then after episode 5, I was like, "I need a break." So I watched the first 5 episodes within, like, 2 days, and then I waited, like, probably, like, 2 or 3 days, and then I binged the last 5 episodes. One of my friends, though, binged all 10 episodes in, like, 2 days, and I was like, "Dude, how'd you do that? Like, what is wrong with you?" But I think it just kinda depends on what you want to do.
Hmm. Yeah, I really I've had enough people tell me to watch it, and it's definitely on again the list of shows that I will eventually get around to watch, just like with Magicians. Um, but it's like, man, I don't know how much I can take before I have to take like that comedy break. Like generally I'll buffer stuff like that with a comedy show or a comedy movie just to kind of like get stuff out of my head.
Yeah, I did the same thing when I initially watched it, and then I just rewatched it in October for Halloween, and I had to have a show, to clear my head and give me a break. But at the same time, like, you're gonna wanna know what happens. You aren't gonna wanna stop. So
And in your email you said next there is going to be like a next season, but it's going to be a separate story. So how like for this season does it wrap up well? Like is it a satisfying conclusion to what you've watched?
I think it is. Um, it's yeah, it ends the story, and I think it's pretty satisfying, for how it can end things. I mean, it's a horror show.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think it's really satisfying, and they've said that all the subsequent seasons, I don't know if it's been approved for more than one or if season 2 is just the only one that's coming, but they're all gonna be standalone, like, just their own story.
Well, that's good because I know, again, equating it to something else that might not even be like remotely close to it, like American Horror Story, was
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, it's going to be standalone, and then it became not standalone and weaving things in and out of it. And I remember trying to watch some of those shows, and it's like, yeah, I'm not really feeling any of this, but I've heard this show good to watch.
Yeah, and this one's based off of a book, the first season, and then the second one is gonna be based off of a book, but they're just 2 separate horror books, and so I don't
Ooh,
think they're gonna try and weave them together in any way, but, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't see them trying to do that.
well, that's good. I didn't even know it was based off a book. So now, see, I've learned something else new today.
Yeah, I ordered the book a few weeks ago. I don't know when I will get around to reading it because my book stack is very tall, but eventually I will.
Oh, geez, it sounds like you have the same problem as me. Like you order books because you hear about them and then they just sit and
Yeah.
take up space.
Yeah, I've had that problem for, like, my entire life.
Yeah, like I used to be real good. Like a couple years ago, I did like the Goodreads challenge where you set a number of books that you're going to read and you try to beat that in a year. And I did it. And then like the next year, I read like two. I think this year I've read probably one or two books, and that's on me. I need to take time to read. But dang, if there isn't more stuff that I have to do.
Yeah, it's so hard. You probably saw I tweeted this. I was gonna try and reread the entire Harry Potter series in October because I thought it would be super fun, and then October ended up being really busy and really stressful, and I'm still only in book 4.
Yeah, my daughter for school, they do a thing where like if you read a million words, then you get to do something cool. But like then the top 10 of those people get to ride in a limo and go to like Barnes and Noble and get a book bought for them and have pizza and all sorts of stuff. So she finally, like, she broke a million words earlier this year. And I'm like, okay, you need to keep reading. You need to keep up so that way you can be like that top 10 person. And Harry Potter was one of those books where I think she's gotten through Order of the Phoenix.
Oh, that's like my favorite book. I love
But
Order of the Phoenix.
yeah, she stopped though because she found some other series that she like really got into. And then she read I don't know if you're familiar with like Rick Riordan. Like he has his own like imprint now, and so she read one of the new Aru Shah books.
Oh my gosh, I heard he was doing that, and I think that's, like, one of the coolest things ever. I, like, love that he did that.
I love it too because I know that he got a lot of questions when he was doing like the Percy Jackson series and the Kane Chronicles and Magnus Chase, about like all these other mythologies. And instead of him saying like, "Oh yeah, I'll do it," like he finds like people that are in that culture and in that background and have that connection to it and have like that's what they're doing, and I love that so much.
Yeah. He's just the best. I love him. And I love his books.
Me too. And you know how you like we were talking about Marvel and like, oh yeah, there's so much intertwining. Like, dang, if he isn't the master of like laying something out in one book and like 10 books later referencing that same thing and you're like, "Oh yeah, I remember that."
He does, and he does it so well, and if I could get one wish granted, it would be for a Percy Jackson TV series.
Oh gosh, yes.
I want that so bad, and then, of course, you would get, like, the subsequent series that come after it as spinoffs,
Mhm.
obviously, and I just want it to be done well because, like, the movies suck, so
Oh, I felt so bad for my kids because in their fourth grade class they had to read Lightning Thief, and then they watched the movie,
Oh,
and my
no.
my daughter came home and she was like, "It is nothing like the book." And I said, "Yeah, I told you that. That's why we didn't ever watch it in the house to begin with." And I tried to warn you guys about this movie, and she was listing all of the changes and how it wasn't like the book, and I said, "No, just read the books and you'll be fine."
Yeah. Ugh, it sucks too, there's so much potential there.
There is. There is. But maybe one day. I don't know who. I imagine Disney would own the rights. So I mean, like, come on, Disney Plus.
Oh my gosh, yeah, Disney Plus. You're
Like
missing this golden opportunity. There's a built-in fan base.
there is. And it's so incredibly like rich and detailed, and it would fit perfectly. Like, just do it.
Yeah, and then there's another series after it, and then another series after that. Like,
Yep.
get with it, Disney.
Yep. Of the 2 books that I've read this year, one was the latest Trials of Apollo book. So
Yeah, I'm in the middle of one of those. I'm like reading 5 different books, and that's probably part of the reason I can't finish any of them.
I used to do that, and now I can barely just do the one. Like, come on, like, because I used to try to like rotate between 3 books, so that way it'd be like a fantasy, a science fiction, then like something else. But nope, I don't even charge my Kindle anymore because there's so many books on that I still haven't read.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, whatever. Whatever. They're just gonna sit there for now, and eventually I'll get to them. It's like video games. Like all my friends were playing video games, and it's like, okay, I'll eventually get to that video game when they're like retro games at this point.
Yeah.
Well, Courtney, we're pretty good on our time here, and I think we got pretty much a good conversation of stuff that I feel was remarkably well. So for the people that have listened to us talk about all this great stuff, where can they find you on the internet to follow you for more of your golden content?
Well, I do most of my fangirling on Twitter, as I have mentioned, so you can follow me there. It is at Courtney B1209, and Courtney's just spelled the normal way, Courtney. And I guess if you care about my life, my Instagram is the same handle, but I don't really fangirl much on there.
Well, I will make sure to have the links in the show notes and on the website and on the Facebook page, so that way people can click, and especially on Twitter, because I have to say, I don't even know how I came across your account. I wish I like took notes to be like, I came across so and so's account because of like this really cool tweet. So that way I could be like, oh yeah, that tweet is like what made me follow you. I don't have a cool story to say about what made me follow you, but subsequently the tweets have been on par with like everything that I need in my life sometimes, when I'm like, yeah, Courtney's got like all the good stuff coming out. So
Thank you. I try.
I do have to say, Courtney, it has been definitely a pleasure for me to follow your account and just like see what's going on over there, because you got lots of good stuff, and I love to see what you got to say about stuff, and especially like, then you add in all the retweets, and you're like, okay, I see where you're coming from. I see what you're putting down.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.